everybody, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We're here with Raman Sehgal, and he is the author of the Floundering Founder, and he also is involved in the biotech space. He has an excellent podcast called Molecule to Market, and Raman is going to be talking to us about all the various things he does, how he does outsourcing, digital marketing, creative strategy, and kind of how to keep it all somehow working and making money and enjoyable and profitable and all that. So Raman, glad to be talking to you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me as a guest.
Glad to have you. And so, since you're my guest, it's kind of your time to shine and talk about those things that you are passionate, turned on, excited about. So what has really gotten you excited to get out of bed in the morning the past 6 to 9 months?
I think in the last year or so, for me personally, the business that I founded 14 years ago, Remarketing, which is a kind of a design, digital and marketing agency that specializes in the pharmaceutical and biotechnology supply chain. So we are not only a niche agency, we're like a super niche agency. And we've been on a tremendous kind of growth journey in the last, I'd say 6-7 years in particular. And I suppose a huge highlight in the last year or so is we did a private equity deal last April, I believe it was. And so, as a founder, to go through that process where you take your agency to market and you sell a chunk of your business. It's one that is not necessarily one that I planned on my journey. And yet it's one that I learned a huge amount from. And what I'm really enjoying at the minute, I suppose to come back to your question, is that experience has enabled me to help other kind of agencies and business owners that have got different types of tech businesses that might be just marketing people like myself from trade that have built a successful business and kind of getting to the point where they want to realize some value in that business. So that, beyond other things that I work on, that's certainly been one of the most exciting aspects in the last kind of 6 to 9 months.
And I can imagine it in biotech, there's got to be all sorts of just crazy new innovative sort of like companies and ideas out there. And it makes me think, like, I'm not even sure I know like what biotech is. Like if someone asked me, I'd be like, I don't know if that like gene splicing or like making vaccines or like putting microchips under your skin or like RFID. Like I have no idea what it even is. So if someone asked you like what's biotech, or what are some of these companies that you help, like, what would you say?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I suppose the way I articulate it in the simplest form, so let's assume you yourself or the listener has had a COVID vaccine or know someone that's had a COVID vaccine, which is the majority of people. That vaccine was probably manufactured by one of our clients. It was probably packaged by another client. It was probably tested by another client. It was probably distributed by another client. So any medicine that is either in development, could be very early stage and just an idea, or all the way to the things that help our families and friends every day all over the world. Our clients are typically involved in those projects. So our clients actually service the biotech and pharmaceutical companies. So the biotech and pharmaceutical companies often are the sponsors who own the drugs, but they outsource quite virtually everything in that process. And those companies that they outsource to are typically our clients. So they are, highly scientific, highly technical, B2B. So it's a very, I suppose, hidden and unusual sector. It's not an easy sector to just walk into because you have to have a specific level of expertise. I've worked in this sector for 20 years or so. But from a business perspective, that makes us really specialist and really niche, and it is a global market as well. So as a consequence of that, I spend a big chunk of my time in North America and a chunk of my time in Europe, and we have clients all over the world, which again is a privilege and an exciting part of what we do at Remarketing.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, I can imagine that being in a B2B space, it's solid and it's hard to get pushed out of it. And also someone like you really know your stuff. And then I imagine that if some one of these biotech companies is looking for your help, they kind of know what they want, right? They know what they're looking for. They instead of just you being like, oh, I serve all sorts of niches, you're like, no, this is what I've done for all these decades.
Yeah, exactly that. And it makes us, to use kind of Seth Godin's phrase, it makes us meaningfully specific. So what happens is a client will come to us saying, hey, we want to target the pharma sector with, some interesting capabilities that they have, or a technology or a manufacturing facility. And the fact that we've done it and we know the kind of playbook and we know what works and what doesn't work is, is good enough reason for them to get very excited by the fact that, wow, I can't believe a company like you even exists. It's a great moment for them often when they find us, and then obviously that's the relationship of then delivering the work consistently. And what we do find is, if we, like every agency, if you deliver well, deliver consistently, clients tend to be loyal and stay with you for many years.
And so what are the deliverables from your agency? Do you do things like the website, the content, the videos, the social media? Like when some company says, we need your help, what is it that you provide?
Sure, it's a good question. And I'm going to use the horrible phrase of, we are what you class as a full service agency these days. We have 85 people in the UK, North America. And so our team spans from, kind of research and strategy team. So, customer insight, voice of the customer, looking at competitor analysis in the market, looking at market trends, looking at internal kind of stakeholders, some like kind of foundational research and work that then helps drive a strategy for a client. So that could be a positioning strategy, a segmentation strategy, developing personas. That often leads into some element of plan, whether it's a marketing roadmap, whether it's a growth strategy. It could be a new rebranding, could be a website, all that kind of stuff. And then we have, I suppose, the more nuts and bolts. We have a creative team, a development team that creates and builds websites, landing pages, email newsletters, and then we have PR, content, digital marketing as well. So I suppose most of the typical service offerings that a marketing communications agency offers that we do. I suppose the difference with us is everything is rooted in just kind of one sector that we work in. So we're iterative in that every time we do a project, we're learning, we're using data, we're using analytics to say, well, actually, what we're finding is this handful of techniques working in combination is working really, really well, versus actually just, having minimal data and just kind of stabbing in the dark and kind of assuming what works and what doesn't. And again, that gives our clients a certain level of reassurance that they're getting good value for money.
And so it seems like from just the way that you're describing things, it seems like you have like all these people on your team, you have these 85 employees, and like everyone has something like a specific job, right? You mentioned like specifically a PR person, specifically someone who's watching the trends. And then, so they all have their specific, like really focused task, and then they work together, kind of, amongst themselves. So instead of like one person juggling like 5 or 6 things, it's like everyone is a specialist, and then they kind of have their place in the bigger system in what it is that you do, kind of in the same way that you mentioned, well, there's all these biotech companies that do specific things, right? There's not one company doing all the vaccine stuff. There's the ones that are just doing the testing, for example. So that's kind of cool to think about. And kind of to get like the creative gears going, right? Because instead of you thinking like, okay, I need this team of like, 4 or 5 people, you're like 85, and everyone has their own little job. And so when you mention how like, sometimes you have fun figuring out combining these kind of different strategies together, is there anything that jumps out for you as far as like just like a fun story to tell where you like really made a difference in one of these companies?
Yeah, there's lots. I mean, and it's funny because I've just come back from an event in Boston, and I was on the flight back with a client that we've worked with for over a decade, and I was saying, when we first started, they were a client based in Scotland, and when we first started working with them, they had 15 people. It's a relatively small business, just starting out, and our job back then was to help deliver some of the kind of basic brand materials to make this company kind of put it on the map, if you like, and supporting them with PR and raising their profile and helping generate leads. And, in the decade that we've supported them, they've grown to over 150 people now in Scotland, which, is a massive growth of any business during, a couple of down patches as well. And obviously we can't put that down to just us. Those guys have driven their strategy and, and done some amazing work. But, if you think of the economic impact of 150 families in, predominantly in say Scotland, it could be anywhere in the world, and that we have played a role in helping that company, generate business all over the world. And that's come from, the services that I mentioned, like really spending time understanding the customers, understanding their problems, communicating how our client, solves those problems in an efficient way and does so better than the competition. has helped drive opportunities that they've then converted, which ultimately they've then been able to retain clients. And we also delve a little bit into working with clients and helping them retain and grow clients, because that's what makes a business valuable ultimately, is not just the ability to win customers, but have really sticky customers that grow and spend more money. And again, that's something that I take huge amount of pride about, like, and that kind of that economic impact, that wealth impact, that family impact, that on the face of it, I say to our team, we're not just a marketing company. We're not only a marketing company that works, to do that. Some of the drug products that that particular client has worked on are the most cutting edge cancer drugs in the world, like what we class as curative cancer drugs that are actually can literally cure a type of cancer for a single patient. Like, absolutely space age exciting stuff. And so for me, you kind of get those combination of like the business impact, but also the health impact. It's that's something I'm certainly very proud of.
Awesome. And so it seems like kind of the common thread in what you said there is to take notice of what gets you excited, what gets you sprung into action, and also what gets your customers excited. So kind of have that empathy there. Don't just rattle off the facts and figures, but figure out like what they're looking for, where they're frustrated, what other competition they're looking at, why they're not going with them, what they would like to have on their wish list to work with you. And then even once you've landed them, don't just stop there, but also what can you do to keep that momentum going and keep them excited and keep them working with you. And it sounds like kind of a simple idea on the surface, but it seems like that's like at least for me, that's like, it's so easy to forget, right? It's so easy to get lost in the minutia, the day to day. And instead of, versus going back to that kind of emotional, like just foundation and being like, okay, like what makes them angry? What would make them happy to know about you? And it seems like, am I right in knowing just in general with like the medical biotech and everything, it seems like in the past like 20 or 30 years, there's just been so many innovations, but you don't always notice it, right? Like you kind of look at like, well, cars in the 60s and 70s look so different versus now. And then you look at like you look out in the street in like 2000 versus now, it kind of looks sort of similar, but then you always hear all these little tidbits, right? You always hear about, like you said, they've cured cancer, or they can do this really amazing tests, or like just all these like incremental medical improvements. I mean, am I wrong in thinking that it just seems like this medicine in general, the last like 10, 20 years, it seems like it's like really been innovative, but it's like, you don't always see it.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, and I suppose the one area everyone did see it was the vaccines, right? Where you had a platform, predominantly a platform which we call as mRNA platform, which was something that had been in development for 20 years in academic environments and hadn't really been brought to. There wasn't the almost obvious call to action to bring a technology like that to market, and it just so happened that the vaccines were its calling, and now that platform has been proven to be useful for most patients. So that then provides a gateway for so many more different types of drugs. I think one way for people to think about it is, 50 years ago, the drug industry would often focus on what we call blockbuster drug products, which are like drugs that would help millions and billions of patients, paracetamol, ibuprofen, Advil, like all these kind of off-the-shelf medicines that help anyone across the board. What we're in the era now of is what we call almost personalized medicines, and what this is kind of evolved towards is much more complex medicines that are made for like what we call rare disease areas. So people that typically are overlooked because there's only say 10,000 people in the world that have this specific area of disease have been overlooked in the past because it's just not the financial benefit to find a cure or a treatment for that. The big shift we've seen is there's been incentives for people drug companies to focus on those areas, which is exciting in so many respects, because what you're now finding is more drugs are coming to market, but they might not be, it might not be the Viagras of this world, but everyone knows about because, it's such a high profile drug. It might be something more subtle. It might be something for a very specific patient population. There's been some breakthroughs, for example, in Parkinson's recently, which is so exciting. And they're only going to get better, these treatments. So it's like anything in life, if you don't work in this sector, I couldn't tell you what the biggest innovations have been in another sector, right? I have no idea because my eyeballs are just not focused on it. But it is, on the podcast where I interview guests from the sector, molecule to market, I'm very privileged to be able to interview real, genuine experts from the space, people developing new drugs, people helping develop new drugs. And it is a really exciting era for drug development as we are today, which is we're seeing more of these kind of specialist drugs come to market that will ultimately help patients all over the world, family members of ours, friends of ours. And it's a really exciting era to be in the space, I have to say.
It sounds exciting, especially because, like you're mentioning, there's some of those like rare diseases. I remember when I was a kid, and you'd hear about things like you mentioned, like diseases you'd never heard of. Only 1,000 people, 10,000 people have them. Just when I was a kid, I always thought like, oh well, if it's this, only these few people have it, it's not going to get that much attention. Like you said, there's no profit in it. Back then, you just assume it's all written off. If someone has that rare disease, they'll have to live with it, they'll have to die with it, or they might not even know they have it. But yeah, when you hear all these things about like the 3D printing, or like the way that they can just test things so quickly. I mean, like just yesterday, I had my 3-year-old son at the doctor, and we thought he might have strep throat, and the doctor like swabbed his throat, put it in some kind of machine, and then within like minutes, we had an answer. And I'm thinking like, didn't even know we had that technology. So it's amazing, all the things that exist. And then, like you said, with the mRNA, sometimes they say things like, we'll be able to in the future like have a vaccine for this or for this. Like you make the one breakthrough, it leads to other things. So I mean, it's an exciting time to be alive, and that's kind of the plus side. But as far as like the downside, what do you see in your industry that frustrates you? Like if it's the industry itself, or with the digital marketing happening, like is there anything that you wish was better?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I'm almost, my life revolves around two slightly different areas. It revolves around marketing, and growth strategies and marketing, which has been my life in terms of my career and my profession, and helping companies grow. But it also revolves around, I suppose, the pharmaceutical and biotech market, where I spend most of my time. And I suppose if I start with the latter, I mean, the biggest frustration and the challenge the industry has is particularly in the US, actually, is pricing and how to make these drugs as affordable as possible. And some of the drugs that I mentioned there, I mean, one of the biggest controversies over these kind of curative cancer drugs is they're so expensive, because they're very expensive to develop and research and then make. And then it's almost like one drug is made for one specific patient. All the economies of scale that you typically get from making billions of tablets or capsules disappear. So you're charging in some cases, millions of dollars per treatment per patient. And we as the industry have to find more cost-effective ways of getting these drugs to market, whereby it makes these products more accessible to people all over the world in countries that can't afford them. So I think there's a huge challenge there around, I suppose, equity of access to the most cutting edge innovations. And as it stands today, it's fortunate for you and I, because we're in the Western world, but we get access to the best stuff because our countries have the most money. But that's not really the way things should be, and that's a big challenge that the industry on a whole has. And I think on the marketing side of things, I'm sure you've had guests on, recently, in how do we grapple with the use of AI in our businesses. And I think that's a massive opportunity and challenge for us at the minute as a marketing agency. I don't see it replacing what we do, but I do see it, I suppose, co-piloting and amplifying and helping us improve what we do, and improving the output and productivity of what we create for our clients. And I think that's an exciting kind of juncture. It reminds me, I mean, you're probably old enough to remember, it's like when the internet came out and was like access, you could build websites, and it kind of changed people's route to market, and it changed things dramatically. Or when the iPhone, I mean, in a weird way, AI technology reminds me of when the iPhone came out, and kind of some people adopted really quickly, but it just changed the way that we do things in lots of ways. And I do think AI, particularly for marketing agencies and anyone in a marketing role, has the power at their fingertips to develop so much more content, whether it be written or imagery, so much quicker than they had done before. I think the challenge in it all is how do you stop it from sounding super generic? So almost contradicting all of that with, if you look at my business, all the businesses, my book, everything I do is niche. Everything is specialist. Everything is focused on a really, really narrow target audience to try and solve a problem for a specific audience. I think the challenge with AI as it stands today, and it does, I mean, by the time this comes out, it's probably going to evolve even more, is just, it's naturally, it has to be relatively generic. So it's how you can take some of that information and, I suppose, apply a human mind and a creative mind to make it really, really special. But maybe just take some of the heavy lift out of it. You know, I think a lot of people that I've worked with over the years struggle with a blank piece of paper in front of them. Like, where do I start? I mean, thankfully, you know, someone like me who's a creative and an author, that's where I'm in my kind of sweet spot. It's like, give me a blank bit of paper, I'll come up with something. But a lot of people struggle with that, and I think you know the AI tools out there give people a fantastic platform to generate content of good quality very, very quickly. Beyond that, then it's how do they make it relevant to their audience? How do they make it specific to their brand, differentiated enough that it doesn't sound like everyone else? So I think from a marketing perspective, I think that's probably the biggest challenge all of us have on our hands at the minute, of how do we, it's super exciting and I'm not denying that. It's more the like, how the heck do we use this stuff to make our lives easier and our output even better?
Well, yeah, like there are those different stages, right? Where once you have it all, once smartphones are figured out, once the internet's figured out, you look back at payphones, answering machines, busy
Crazy, isn't it?
signals,
Yeah.
and you wonder like, how the heck did I ever survive when, if I wanted to talk to this friend, there was no Facebook to message them. I just had to maybe try them again next week. If I didn't know where someone was, I just would hope I would run into them. You look back and you think it's crazy that we survived. But then during the transitional time when we tried to figure out things like the internet, smartphones, there was a lot of awkwardness, right? A lot of weird steps where no one really knew how web pages should look, or you had to dial up and wait around. And yeah, I think I agree with you with AI. There's that transitional awkwardness where people just expect maybe the wrong things out of it. And then it's interesting, like you said, like the kind of the co-pilot mindset, where instead of writing from scratch, it'll be your helper. And it's not like it does the work for you, but you shift the work that you do and maybe make yourself more of an editor and clean up what they write, or use them to start and you finish, or you start and they finish, and all those different things. Yeah. And so it's just like, it's just like anything else. It's a tool. And if you have a hammer or a screwdriver, it's not going to hammer the nail for you. You need to know how to actually put that to use. And so there are challenges ahead, but they are exciting challenges. And so we've mentioned about different things like your company and your podcast and all the different kind of things that you've learned. So as we're beginning to ramp down our conversation, I think it's always fun to put my guests on the spot and ask them about advice they wish they'd gotten 20 years ago. And it always seems like a deer in headlights. I have no idea how to answer, but everyone always has like a helpful, simple, concise, profound answer. So what's your answer? If you could time travel and tell your younger self 20, 30 years ago, maybe even when you started, what advice would you give your past self? What advice did you wish you'd gotten back then?
Before I do that, can I tell you the piece of advice that I did get, which really did help me in life? And I would almost want to share this bit. And it's actually an entire chapter in my book that is.
They call this pivoting, right? This is good as what politicians do.
Yeah, and I'll come back. I will come back. But one of the quite early on in my career, in my business career, a cousin of mine ripped out a page of an article. This shows you how long ago, and he gave me this like article, and it was basically the concept of not chasing money. That if you chase the money, the money will never be enough. So once you've earned, if your goal is 100,000, you'll get to 100,000, then you'll make it 150, and then 200, and it never ends. And actually, that if your goal is other things, and like in my instance, it was creating beautiful, brilliant work and just making clients happy, that the money will come. And I'm a massive believer that that was one of the best bits of advice that I ever had early on in my career, and it's really kind of done me quite well. One area that if I go back, it's probably not 20 years, but it's probably 10 years ago, was a lot of our conversation today is your kind of listener will probably get from me, like I'm a big believer in niches and or niches and being narrowly focused. And for the first 5 or 6 years of running my business, we were all over the place. We were trying to be everything to everyone, and that left us in a muddle, and it left us as a generalist, and it made us very missable to lots of people out there because they couldn't really get what we did, or we were trying to do, be everything for everyone. So I think if I had my time again, it would probably be to niche down sooner rather than later. Because actually the real growth and success that I've had in business has come, probably in the last 7 or 8 years when we made that decision to pivot and really, really focus the company on niching down. And so that's probably the biggest piece of advice at a business level. At a personal level, it's going to may sound a bit woohoo, but I suppose when you have kids and you get a bit older, you kind of realize time is running out to an extent, and that's quite a sad, kind of morbid thing to say. But but you remember 20 years ago, if anyone meditated, you'd probably just mock them for being a loser and all that kind of stuff. Whereas it's funny. I mean, you're from California, probably wasn't the case there 20 years ago. But for me, I think some of the things I've learned through meditation practice and getting up earlier in the morning and just having time for myself has been unbelievably powerful from a mental health perspective. I've never suffered, touch wood, mental health issues. I'm very conscious of being around my kids and being present with my kids and my team, and just being aware of nature. It's a beautiful day here in the UK today. Going outside and feeling the sunshine. Like, I imagine every single one of your listeners is a busy person with a busy job that just will drain everything out of them if you let it to. So I think for me, it's just making sure that, and if I look back to my 20s and 30s, that's what I was like. And just making sure that you make time to just breathe and just enjoy life a little bit. And the journey is genuinely the best part of it. But, I don't want to get to 60 and be like, oh my God, it's where the hell did the left 40 years go, or something like that. So, that kind of softer one is that kind of be present, whoever you're with, whatever you do, and just be in the moment and get off your phones would be my advice.
I agree completely. And you're right that many times it's been a cliche, and then some people ignore it or they laugh at it, but it's so simple. It's easy to overlook, just to slow down and appreciate. And if you're always rushing from thing to thing or thinking, I don't know how long I can keep this up, then time really will accelerate, and it will be very, very bland and repetitive. So why not mix things up and take care of your mental health and enjoy those moments? And you reminded me, there's some kind of poster that you can buy. It's like a grid of like the rest of your life. And it's like, it lists like all the Wednesdays, all the Mondays, all the weekends. And you look, and it fits on the back of like your office door. And
my God.
And you can, when you buy it, you can get it custom and say like, okay, if I'm like 34 years old, it will be like a third of the way filled in. And it's really depressing if you think about it. But then a better way, like you said, is to make time for what's important, plan your day, meditate, think things through, which, a lot of people don't do. And so, but because people like you and me are entrepreneurs, business owners, we kind of think differently. And as you also mentioned, we're born in like the best period of time and of life so far, and the very developed part of the world, right? You could have been born in the desert, in the jungle, in some poor country, and a lot of people don't realize how lucky they are just from being born, that the time and place they really won the lottery. And then in the business sense, you say, going back to that the Seth Godin thing, what was it called, the meaningful specificity, and like
meaningfully specific,
meaningfully specific, and like Napoleon Hill calls it specialized knowledge. I mean, stand for something, be specific about something, solve a specific problem. If you're spread all out and no one really knows what you do, what your specialty is, then how can you stand out from anyone else? And these are all simple concepts, but they're so simple that many people aren't even considering them. And that's why they need people like you and your book and your advice and your company and your podcast. So if someone says, man, I was so impressed by all the nuggets of knowledge that Raman shared today, what's the next step here? If someone says, I want to find out about his company and see if he's a good fit for me, tune in on the podcast, what's the logical place to go after this point?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest place to go is my website, ramansehgal.com, which is RAMANSEHGAL.com, nice and simple. And and pick up my book, Floundering Founder. It includes a lot of what we've talked about today. It's very much aimed at people, business owners, CEOs, entrepreneurs going through scale up, and maybe just feeling a bit down and at a juncture in their life and their career, and it's kind of how to navigate through those challenges from a business and personal perspective. And it includes quite a lot of a huge amount of honesty, and in terms of stories, that things I got wrong, mistakes I got made, and things that I did to get myself back on track. And so I tried to write a book that was genuinely authentic, and it wasn't preachy, and it wasn't I don't use fancy words that people don't understand. It's designed to be a very easy read, 24 short chapters, so you can get through it pretty quickly as well. So yeah, and if you can look up my name or Floundering Founder on Amazon or wherever you get your books, you can see it, and it's thankfully got lots of good ratings as well. So hovering about 4.7 out of 5 on Amazon, which I'm delighted with.
And your numbers, I can tell from a conversation we've had, and you have to, right? If you have 85 employees and you want to know where you are and what your goals are, you have to know your numbers. And so even as
Totally
far
agree.
as your book sales and your rating, what that KPI is, what you're shooting for. And so if you out there feel like you yourself are a floundering founder and you need help to get to that next level, or if you say like, what has it all meant so far, or what can I do better or do differently, or just think better, then check out the book, The Floundering Founder, on Amazon. And then as far as your company and the podcast, what are the websites for those?
Yeah, so if you go to ramansehgal.com, you can actually find everything through there, so all the links. But the podcast is Molecule to Market, which you can find on app stores, and it's probably most relevant for anyone in the drug development pharmaceutical space. I mean, we do cover leadership and entrepreneurship and things as well, but I imagine a majority of your content would find the book the most relevant. And from memory, on the website as well, on ramansehgal.com, you can find I think you can download the first 50 pages or so for free. So if you don't want to, spend $15 or whatever, and you want to just kind of try before you buy, then go ahead and do that. And then Remarketing, if you Google Remarketing, which is just Remarketing, all one word, you'll find the business. I also have a talent business called Lead Candidate as well. So I'm a co-founder of that business, which is kind of talent, but in exactly the same space. So same concept, but just a talent acquisition business as well. So find out all like recent blogs I've written and podcasts that I've featured on, events that I've spoken at. Yeah, anyone. And it, I don't make money off any of that stuff. It's designed to just be, sharing is caring and helping other people. So I hope your audience will get some value from some of the material.
And I know they will. And so you're a man of many accomplishments, and the central hub to check out all those things, like we said, was ramansehgal.com, RAMANSEHGAL.com. We will see you there. And if you enjoyed Raman's advice, his personality, etc., then keep that train rolling, right? Don't just stop here. Check out his podcast, check out his content, so that way you can get more of what helped you out, and that way you can get to where you want to go. So Raman, very happy and enjoyable speaking with you, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Just having me on.